So now we're going to get into the big gorilla in the room, right? The elephant in the room, whatever you want to call it, the pink elephant. Finances, financial statements. And I am fully aware as we get into this Unit 3, cash, costs, forecasting, all that stuff. Man, it's not an easy process. So what I really want to do is, and what I've done with Unit 3 is narrow down the amount of content that we really focus on, but we're going to go much deeper with these, and it's just going to be a process. So just to introduce Unit 3, to look at all these things. One, we want to look at your financial assumptions. Everybody, when you get out of marketing and go into finance, or your cash, right? Whatever it might be, certain things have to happen, right? So we're going to be assuming a certain level of clientele. We're going to be assuming a certain level of costs. And from my standpoint, as I go and I read through your business plan, I just have to know where we stand. So, talk about some of your operations, talk about how they impact your business, and give some life to what those numbers are going to be. When we look at startup assets, expenses, capital, you will find the financial statements Excel spreadsheet. Should have 5 to 7 different sheets on it, pages on it. And what it's going to do is it's going to give you a very clear indication of how much money we're going to be needing, how much cash or checking accounts or assets that we currently have, and it will go through all of your other documents as well. So when we look at the rest of these, whether it's startup expenses, assets, we're going to go back to that financial statements document. You can find it in a number of places in our Blackboard course. We're going to look at market share as well. So when we look at it, I always use the example of Starbucks because no matter where you go, other than Seattle, it's basically the same. Starbucks has a 33% market share for coffee shops everywhere. So you go to Columbus, 33% of the total dollar is spent on coffee is going to be through Starbucks. You go to Austin, Texas, same thing. You go to Minneapolis, same thing. What we want to do is we want to focus on getting a market share number percentage for you. And whether that's 0.5%, whether that's 1, whether that's 5 or 10, from that standpoint, I don't necessarily care about the number, but I do care about that you have the context, the depth to back it up to prove it. So we'll look at market share. That market share number is going to go directly into cash flow. It's going to grow directly into forecasting sales for your year 1. We will spend a lot of time going through those financial statements, looking at cash flow, how we're going to forecast sales out, the seasonality of business, especially here in Ohio if it's an outdoor. You look at a lot of the landscape, they do 100%, 95% of their business in spring and summer, and then in fall and winter they're sitting around. So we want to see where those ebbs and flows are so that we can anticipate our costs and anticipate our forecasting. And lastly, we want to look at financing and funding. We want to see how much we're going to need to operate for 6 months, a year, 2 years out, and make sure we actually have the ability to get that level of financing. And whether it comes from bootstrapping, whether it comes from your own sales and profits and revenues, that's great. If we have to go and we have to find alternative sources of financing or funding, then we can do that as well. But there's your introduction for Unit 3. Look forward to working with you, and if you have any questions, get them to me as soon as you can. Bye-bye.